Welcome to the second day of student presentations of Honors Week. I'm Eileen Lieberman. I'm the chair of the Honors Council and director of the Honors Program, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome you all here today. We're going to get started without further ado, and we'll save all of our questions for the end of the presentations, and then open the floor to questions for all of the presenters. And happy first day of spring, everyone. Our first presenter will be Nick Beaton. Nick is a student in Management Information System, and he was recommended, by Professor Goki, and he'll be talking about statistical analyses of national UFO sightings.
Hello, everyone. Let me open my presentation here. My name is Nick Beaton, and I am a senior here at Widener University. In order to understand the statistical analysis of national UFO sightings, it is first important to understand the concept of data mining. Data mining is a process where a programmer takes large volumes of data and does processes to convert that into information. That information is then used to make knowledgeable decisions. All right. For example, an individual working for an organization like SEPTA might use train schedules combined with information from a weather database, compile the information to create a better schedule for wintertime transit routes. Data mining is a very new field because it uses large volumes of data. Such large volumes that it takes computer processors an extremely long time to process this information. Thus, it's only been available in the last few years. One of the issues with data mining is called dirty data. Dirty data is when fields are missing or fields are misspelled. This is common when volumes of data are very large. This must be accounted for before the data miner or programmer processes data. So, at the beginning of the fall semester, Professor Goki gave my class an assignment. The assignment was to select a database, then mine through this database. At first, I wasn't sure what to do. And then one evening, I was watching a program about UFOs. So I decided to search the term UFO database. And the #1 Google result is the National UFO Reporting Center. This is the place where if individuals see strange lights in the sky and they call the police or they call the government, this is who they direct that person to make a report to. On this database, or on this website, exists a database. This is Pennsylvania. There are around 3,000 sightings for Pennsylvania and 50,000 sightings for the whole nation. As you can see, individuals put in fields like date, time, city, shape, etc. So the next task for a data miner is to convert this into a raw data format, called a CSV file. This is what is used by the program, the statistical analysis software. It reads through this and makes sense of it. So the first step was, what information can I derive from this data? Immediately I thought, well, I can do the UFO sightings per state and the UFO sightings per city. So this is what my results were. As you can see, the #1 state for UFO sightings is California. The #2 is Washington State. Something interesting about Washington State, though, is it has a much smaller population than any of the states around it. It's number 13 in population size, but #2 in UFO sightings. So, I was able to generate a nice density graph. As you can see, the average, some of the statistics at the bottom, the average is 800 sightings per state. And it appears from this graph that the states with more populations have more sightings. And then I was able to use the software to count the number of sightings per city. As you can see, New York City, number 1, which is the most densely populated city in the nation. So something started going through my mind that, these places that have large densities of people also have large UFO sightings. So I ran this correlation coefficient in the statistical analysis software, and there is a strong correlation between the size of the city and the number of sightings. So I decided to look for the outliers, what I call the UFO hotspots. The cities with small populations, but a large number of sightings. To do this, it's a pretty simple equation. It's the UFO sightings per city over the population. But what is difficult is now I had to match up the sighting for each city with the population for that city. So I had to go into the U.S. Census Bureau, obtain the information for every city in the United States and the population of that city. So then I had to take Chester, Pennsylvania, the sightings for Chester, Pennsylvania, and combine that with the population for Chester, Pennsylvania. Run this through the software, and this is what I was able to obtain as my result. As you can see, number 1 is Lake Buena Vista, Florida. Population of 15 people, and sightings of 7. So immediately I thought, oh, there we go, this is the place. So I did some further research. Lake Buena Vista, Florida is home to Disneyland. So very small residential population, but hundreds of thousands of visitors per year. That seems to be the trend with a lot of these cities. They all most of them appear to be resort towns. But then there was one interesting case. If you look at the bottom of the graph, there's a place called Tinley Park, Illinois. If you notice, it has a pretty large population, but it also has a large number of sightings. So I did further research about this city, and it has fairly normal demographics. There's nothing too strange about it, until there was a mass sighting event. A few of them. There's one in 2004 and one in 2005. So something strange is going on in Tinley Park. Okay, so in conclusion, the process of data mining isn't necessarily important for researching UFOs. But what's important is I was able to take this extremely large volume of data and narrow it down to this one event in Tinley Park, Illinois, where people had a mass sighting of UFOs. That is really what is interesting with this software. Future research of this, I might look at the government Air Force bases or research by county. But it's interesting what we can do with the software today. All right, that concludes me.
Thank you, Nick. There are some empty seats if you guys want to disperse yourselves a bit. Our next presenter will be Jennifer Harnden, who is a civil engineering major, and she was recommended by Professor Purvis Poor, and she's going to be talking about dynamic properties of oil-based clays.
Hello everyone, like Dr. Diglin said, I'm Jennifer Harnden. I'm a civil senior engineering student here. For the past year, I've been working under Dr. Purvis Poor, a CE faculty member. We've been researching the large strain properties of a proprietary clay. Two of my group members actually couldn't be here today, but I want to recognize them. They're Mike Erstick and Avi Mursky. So before I really get in depth, I just want to lay out the goals of the project and the basic methodology of how we achieve those goals. The primary point of the research was to develop a finite element model of a proprietary clay, which included its dynamic properties and also characterizing the impact of an object hitting this clay. We did this through a ball drop test, And a high-speed camera captured this image, and we were able to extract time history data, formulate an acceleration, impact, stress distribution, and most importantly, find our stress and strain evolution. This data also led us to some of the material properties, most importantly the constrained modulus, and it helped us better understand the structural damping of the material itself. And you may wonder why this is important. The clay we've been working with is actually a proprietary oil-based clay called Roma Plastina No. 1. And it's an oil-based clay, and it does not contain any water, and it's infinitely workable, which means that you can mold it, set it aside, and let it harden, and then actually remold it again. And this clay is actually very important because it's used as a backing material in lightweight body armor. So that's why we want to better understand its structural damping properties and characterize the impact. So currently, what they do is they condition the clay, and they then check for its readiness using a ball drop test, the same one that we have implemented in our research. And their threshold for acceptance is a 44 millimeter penetration. So anything 44 millimeters or less classifies the clay as being ready to be used as a backing material. So the ball drop test uses a 1 kilogram, 2.5 inch diameter steel ball dropped at a height of 2 meters. And like I said before, their indicator is a permanent penetration. And this isn't necessarily the best way to check for the readiness of the clay because it doesn't take into account the rate of impact or any structural damping the clay undergoes. So we used a high-speed camera to record the impact. And as you can see, we then took the blue and gray image and transferred that into a black and white image. And using this color threshold, we were able to create a binary image. This binary image could then be scripted in MATLAB, so we could track the position of the ball and extract displacement time data. So using this displacement time data, we were able to find our velocity, our acceleration, and eventually our force. And using this force allowed us to calculate one of the main parameters we were looking for, which is the stress distribution. We did this by taking the force divided by the area during the duration of impact. Another way we also found the stress is by using a tactical sensor. And we placed this under the clay mat, and upon impact, the sensor would begin to read the stress distribution that the clay was feeling from the ball. So, to characterize the material, we used the stress that we calculated before and also the strain. The strain came from our impact displacement with time history. And having both stress and strain, we were able to develop what's called a stress-strain curve. And this is very common in materials engineering. But the important thing that this tells us is our constrained modulus. The constrained modulus is actually the slope of that stress-strain curve. So after understanding our constrained modulus, we went on to look at the structural damping properties of the clay itself. And the structural damping is dependent on the coefficient of restitution, the loss tangent, and the complex modulus. So to find this, we took our initial drop height of 2 meters, and also for each trial, we found the maximum rebound height. And this relationship using these equations led us to our loss tangent and to our complex modulus and damping coefficient. So some of our results. We actually had another group working on small strain applications for the same proprietary clay. They did a lot of static testing and also thermal testing. But the most important thing they did was small strain dynamic testing. And they did this using resonant column applications and ultrasonic applications. And this is important because in our finite element model, we not only need large strain, but small strain information. So our large strain work led us to a few key factors. We found the max peak impact force to be 1,593 newtons, the constrained modulus to be 1.37 gigapascals, the loss tangent to be 0.318, the damping coefficient to be 0.159, and the complex modulus to be 0.436 gigapascals. This is all information that will be inputted into a finite element model to represent this clay in a model system. So in conclusion, we were able to both characterize not only the impact, but the material properties themselves. And this along with small strain data will allow us to formulate a complete finite element model. Some next future steps we hope to do is to correct any assumptions that we've made. For example, for damping, we based our assumptions off of viscoelastic material, which our clay does not completely represent. So we'll have to go back and account for plastic deformations using an energy work balance. So after we create this finite element analysis and model, it'll really help us better understand the efficiency of this clay as a backing material, and also help us better understand how we can account for when the clay is ready to create safer vests. So that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Our next speakers will be Greg Millio, who is a biology pre-physical therapy major, and Duclos, who is a biology and criminal justice major. They were recommended by Professor Vodnik, and they'll be speaking on the effects of acclimation temperature on digestive performance of Anoles carolinensis. Right. Okay, guys, you're on.
Okay, so I'm Greg Millio, this is my partner Dr. Bo, and we studied the effects of acclimation temperature on digestive performance for Carolina Anoles.
So pretty much the purpose of this experiment was to observe how temperature acclimation affects digestive efficiency in Anoles carolinensis. We measured two physiological responses, which were rate of passage and energy assimilation. Rate of passage is the duration between the initial ingestion of food and until the time period when waste was evacuated from the digestive tract of the organism. Energy assimilation is the percentage of energy an organism is able to extract from total stored energy within a food item. These two variables are important indicators to see any changes in response to temperature acclimation. We feel this is important given the limited research concerning acclimation on an organism. The majority of research is on how ambient temperature affects physiological functions of organisms. However, these responses are acute, meaning they are short-term and changes frequently. On the other hand, acclimation is a response to chronic exposure and has the ability to alter one's genotypic and phenotypic expression. So we hypothesized that increasing acclimation temperature would result in more efficiency in food processing. As a result, we expect to see a shorter passage duration and an increase in digestive efficiency in anoles that are acclimated to a higher temperature. This research is important given current environmental issues concerning climate changes due to human overdependency of fossil fuels. Researchers have already predicted that future global temperature will increase as a result of this, and that organisms living within an ecosystem will have to adapt to this new elevated temperature in order to survive.
Lizards are ectothermic animals, meaning they depend upon the external environment to regulate body temperature. Both of these charts are congruent with research Dr. Bruce Grant conducted back in the early 90s in Big Bend, Texas, where he set up model lizards, which the bottom chart shows, that recorded the available body temperatures for the lizards during the course of the day. And they observed the lizards at a range of 10 degrees Celsius, between like 28 degrees and 30 degrees, meaning they had an optimal temperature for which they would do physical activities.
So acclimation is pretty much the physiological response of an organism to chronic exposure to one or more environmental conditions. This demonstrates phenotypic plasticity within an organism, which means that these organisms naturally possess genes within them that allow them to adapt multiple phenotypes under given conditions. For example, this graph illustrates acclimation on a evolutionary scale. It compares enzyme substrate affinity within organisms in habitats with varying temperatures. However, a it shows that the enzyme substrate affinity within these organisms fall within a specific range. However, the temperature, the environmental temperature changes greatly between from one organism to the next. This illustrates the roles that phenotypic plasticity plays in an organism to optimize physiological functions given available environmental conditions.
We conducted previous research last semester in which we acclimated the lizards to a cold temperature in the environmental chamber on the 4th floor to 16 degrees Celsius, and our control was the same. The lizards were placed in the amphibian room on the 4th floor as well, at roughly 24 degrees Celsius room temperature. And our results showed that the digestive efficiency of the cold acclimated anoles was decreased in comparison to the control group.
Okay. So for this experiment, we separated the anoles into two different groups. One group was acclimated to room temperature at 24 degrees Celsius, and another was acclimated to 37 degrees Celsius, which was referred to as the high group. We fed the lizards 2 crickets each every Monday and Friday, and provided them with water in a petri dish and in the form of mist from the water bottle that we used to coat the inside of the tank every day. Observation of lizards was achieved using video surveillance, and feces were collected for analysis using biochemistry.
This is a screenshot of the Zomoto video surveillance system that we use. The cameras would relay the footage to the above address, and we were able to see all 4 tanks at the same time. We could stream live, see what lizards were doing, but mostly we used the recorded footage to see when the lizards ate the cricket that we fed them and when the waste was evacuated from their digestive system.
So to determine digestive efficiency, we use a biochemistry, which is a device that allows the person to determine the total stored energy within a substance. We determined the heat of combustion for whole crickets and for digested crickets in the form of feces. Using the equation below, we were able to calculate the total amount of energy that was the lizard was able to assimilate.
These results are in regards to our first hypothesis, in which we predicted that the high acclimation temperature will result in a shorter passage duration, and these results support our hypothesis. The 37-degree acclimated anoles had a rate of passage of about 32 hours, and the control group at 24 degrees Celsius had a rate of passage of about 43 hours.
In addition, the results also support our second hypothesis that increased acclimation temperature will increase the amount of energy assimilated. It shows that those acclimated to 37 degrees Celsius had a more than 10% increase in digestive efficiency.
So we can conclude that the hot acclimated anoles had a better digestive efficiency than the control group, which is somewhat counterintuitive because the longer that the food is in the digestive tract, the longer it has for energy absorption. However, this showed that even though the food was in the digestive tract for a shorter amount of time, the energy absorption was still higher than the control group. This may be due to the isoenzymes that the lizards are expressing due to their acclimation that not only help with muscle performance in the digestive tract, but energy absorption. Our future research, we would like to analyze the digestive enzymes of these lizards. We would try different temperatures for acclimations, different rates of acclimation, and also change their habitat to something that's more representative of their natural habitat. And also, in regards to climate change, we feel that this species might be more, might benefit more from a rise in temperature.
So we want to thank Dr. Botnick, Dr. Kaufman, and Dr. Grant, and the ladies in the prep room for all their help during the experiment.
Our next presenter will be Cassandra Latsios, who is a financial management major. She was recommended by Professor Harber, and she will be talking about poison in a bottle, alcohol and its poisonous effects on Native American culture.
Hi everyone, I'm Cassandra Latsios. I'm a senior and a management major in the School of Business. Today I'll be talking about alcohol and its effects on Native American civilization. Just to give you a general idea of the devastation alcoholism can cause, In the year 2007, on the Rosebud Sioux Reservation in South Dakota, authorities were called to the scene of more than 144 suicide attempts. Most of these attempts were youth. Native American youth between ages 15 to 24 are 3 times more likely to commit suicide than the national average for their age group. This abnormally high rate is attributed to the fact that the youth have no hope, no refuge, their parents are not present, and they experience the effects of alcoholism on a daily basis. Alcoholism is a serious disease. Alcoholism is a serious disease that runs rampant among tribes in Native American community and prevents them from carrying out their full potential as a society. There are 4 risk factors. These include historical injustices, genetic factors, cultural factors, and social factors. Historically, alcohol has been used by many Native American tribes in religious and cultural ways. The Papago of New Mexico put a positive value on intoxication in a controlled religious setting, and the Western Apache and Navajo served alcohol to promote mingling among social groups. Many tribes in the American Southwest drank fermented cactus juice to purify their minds and bodies. As you can see, many tribes use alcohol throughout their history, but historical use differs from present use in that historical use was controlled, while present use is uncontrolled and abused and has negative effects on Native American culture. When European settlers from England, France, and Spain arrived in North America, they began trading with Native Americans, using alcohol during negotiations because it made the Native Americans more willing to give up their valuable resources. Soon there was a large demand for alcohol, which was a lucrative trade item for Europeans because it was consumed quickly, needed to be replenished constantly, and was addictive, therefore giving the traders an advantage over the Native American tribes. The government also used alcohol to take advantage of Native Americans in treaty negotiations. The U.S. was able to gain much territory as a result of this practice under Andrew Jackson between 1829 and 1837. The influence of European drinking tendencies made the problem of alcohol use worse. Many Native Americans were not sure how to use alcohol, so they gave the Europeans weed a try. So the Europeans drank to drunkenness and often got violent in their trading sessions, so the Native Americans followed this lead. While historical events introduced Native Americans to alcohol, genetic risk factors intensified the problem. Between 50 to 60% of the risk for alcoholism in males is caused by genetics. Studies have identified a gene that is present in certain populations that causes unpleasant reactions such as headache, rapid heartbeat, nausea, and drowsiness when alcohol is metabolized. This gene is present in the Chinese and Japanese populations, and the Native Americans do not have this gene, which causes them to experience the effects of alcoholism, unlike the Chinese and Japanese. Both social and cultural risk factors also combine to create a feeling of anxiety and depression among Native Americans. Tribal life is bleak, poverty and unemployment rates are very high, school dropout rates are high as well, and the rate of school completion is low. Family support systems are weak or non-existent. To an extent, the lack of parental support is due to the boarding school system, which has been in place throughout history. This is when Native American children are sent to boarding schools to experience American culture and become Americanized. They are removed from their homes, and behavior is shaped by physical and emotional punishment. Often when they grow up and have children of their own, they use physical and emotional punishment on their children as well, contributing to a feeling of hopelessness among the youth. Many researchers believe that the high level of alcohol abuse result from an attempt to deal with psychological problems associated with feeling a disconnect from both their own culture and American culture as well. Overall, alcoholism has an extremely negative impact on Native American tribes. Some of the direct impacts of this abuse are death, liver disease, and fetal alcohol syndrome. In a study conducted in 2006 by the Federal Center for Disease Control, 11.7% of Native American deaths between 2001 and 2005 were attributed to alcohol, compared with 3.3% for the entire U.S. population. So this is a big difference. 75% of all accidental deaths were due to alcohol. Alcoholism also causes indirect effects such as poverty, cluster suicides, which is when one suicide leads to a group of suicides, like I referenced in the beginning, deviant behavior and crime, illegal drug use, and loss of traditional culture. Overall, the situation is bleak, but there are 4 groups that can help keep alcoholism from leading to the downfall of the Native Americans. First, the U.S. government can create regulations to help keep alcohol abuse to a minimum. As early as 1832, Congress actually did pass a law banning the sale of alcohol to Native Americans. The law was repealed in 1953, but many tribes chose to stay dry, meaning on their reservations there is no transport, possession, or drinking of alcohol allowed. Secondly, the business community has a large impact on the amount of alcohol sold to Native Americans. Often they own businesses right off the reservation, such as bars and liquor stores, and Native Americans go popularize these places, and they end up drinking even though their reservation is dry. So ethical business practices can help reservations combat alcohol abuse. Next, residents in local communities can help the situation. They generally have a feeling of denial of any responsibility for the Native Americans' situation, and they should have responsibility to alleviate the problem by allowing for treatment centers to be established in their towns, and they need to realize that the Native Americans will drink and drive and affect their towns as well, so they need to have a feeling of responsibility. Finally, the Native Americans have a responsibility to themselves and to their tribes to help decrease the amount of alcohol served and focus less on drinking and more on tribal faith. Already, many tribes have taken steps to promote alcohol-free events. More of these events, in addition to recognizing the cause of the problem and taking steps to prevent it, should help those who are afflicted with the disease get help and reduce tribal dependence on alcohol, preserving the integrity of Native American civilization for future generations. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Cassandra. Our next presenters will be Michael Colgan, who is a biology major, Kelsey Fisher, who is a biology major, and Ortiz, who is an environmental science major. They were recommended by Professors Crum and Goodrich, and they will be speaking on host-plant preference of Epimecis, Epimecis hortaria. We didn't do this, we practiced this.
Hello everyone, my name is Michael Colgan. This is Kelsey Fisher and this is Ortiz, and we did our presentation on the host plant preferences of Epimecis. So many species of caterpillars, their diet consists of a single host plant. Many other species can consume several or many different types of plants. These species, there's significant variation among their host plant diet within the range of their habitat and as they age. And there are also many benefits to switching host plant species as well. The different host plants have varying amount of nutritional value, so by switching the plant type that they're eating, they're able to receive a more well-rounded diet and to support their growth. As a defense mechanism, many plants produce toxic compounds to deter predators from consuming the plants. So by switching plant types, the caterpillars are able to avoid consuming too much of a single compound and avoid accumulating too much of a toxin that might otherwise be detrimental to them. Thirdly, the content of a plant's leaves can influence the palatability of the caterpillar to predators and parasitoids. So by switching plants, the caterpillars are able to avoid becoming too appealing to a particular predator or parasite. It's also important to consider the ecological significance of host plant switching on caterpillars. So while it's still up for debate, there's evidence that suggests that the food that's eaten by the mother moth or butterfly as a caterpillar influences where she chooses to lay her eggs as an adult. And this, in turn, influences the initial diet of her offspring, because the caterpillars are more likely to eat the food that they are first exposed to when they hatch. Thirdly, the plant food choice of the caterpillar can affect the growth of the plant, because the caterpillars consume a large amount of leaf tissue, and so this can negatively impact the growth of the plant. So for our project, we're studying the polyphagous species Epimecis hortaria. And Epimecis hortaria are found on 4 primary plants: the Rhododendron tulipifera, tulip poplar, Asimina triloba, pawpaw, Sassafras albinum, sassafras, and Lindera benjamin, spice bush. Epimecis hortaria in all 4 of these host plants are found locally throughout Pennsylvania and Delaware. For our project, we want to study specifically the effect of host plant diet on larval fitness and food preference. So our research was broken down into 2 main components. The first part, we studied larval success on each of the individual host plant diets that I already mentioned, as well as a mixed diet of all 4 host plants that more accurately represents the variety of plants that they were exposed to in the wild. Secondly, we studied larval host plant preference at different ages, following an initial diet on a single host plant.
Okay, so our Epimecis hortaria larvae were collected from the Alcoholism State Park in Delaware, and we brought them back to the lab, where we raised them to adults, and from adults we mated them, where they laid clusters of eggs. From their offspring, we used the offspring to conduct our experiments. The first experiment was the effects of post-plant diet on larval fitness, and then the second experiment was the effect of initial post-plant diet on food preference. So for our first experiment, again, effects of post-plant diet on larval fitness, the larvae were individually raised on a type of food, a food treatment in a Ziploc bag. So the different food types were tulip poplar, sassafras, spice bush, pawpaw, and a combination of all these. For our data, we used the larvae were weighed 3 times a week into the pupated.
So once we collected all of our data, we looked at the maximum larval weight, which is the heaviest that the caterpillar was throughout its entire life from birth till pupation. And when we did an ANOVA on all of these data points, we saw that there was no significant data in the maximum larval weight. We also looked at the number of days it took for them to pupate, and when we analyzed this data with an ANOVA, we saw that the larvae raised on pawpaw and spice bush took a significantly longer time to reach pupation than the larvae raised on any other food type. We also looked at the pupal weight, so once it reached pupation, we weighed it again, and we saw that the larvae raised on tulip poplar, sassafras, or the mixed food type were significantly heavier than the pupa raised on pawpaw, and also the pupa raised on spice bush were not significantly different from any of the other food types. So in conclusion, the larvae fed on tulip poplar, sassafras, or the mixed diet spent less time as larvae and were the heaviest pupae. We think that there would be, if we had a larger sample size, because there was a lot of mortality with this experiment that we ran, that there would be a difference in the maximum larval weight because we ran these experiments the year before and there was. Also, it shows that the results that tulip poplar, sassafras, and mixed diets could have a better nutritional value or could have fewer plant toxins in them.
So for our second experiment, we did effects of initial post-plant diet on food preference. So again, we individually raised the caterpillars now on 4 food types: tulip poplar, sassafras, spice bush, and pawpaw. But after 20 days, the larvae were placed in a 1 cubic foot mesh cage with all 4 food types. So therefore, they can pick which food type they would prefer. And this was conducted for 24 hours. On the next slide, I will show you the cage. And then in order to collect our data, we measured the leaf area before and after the experiment to see how much was consumed of the leaves. So this is the cage, and as you can see, there's 4 test tubes inside the cage, and it's covered all around so the caterpillar can't leave, and so the caterpillar can have any preference of food choice he would like.
So when we analyzed this data, we saw that the larvae raised on sassafras preferred sassafras when given this environment, and the larvae raised on tulip poplar preferred tulip poplar. Also, the larvae raised on pawpaw or spice bush didn't really have a preference, and there was a lot more variability in what they chose. So we're concluding that that sassafras and tulip poplar could show signs of induction. So since they preferred what they were raised on, it shows induction. And the individuals who were fed on tulip poplar, sassafras, and mixed diets had the highest pupil weights and pupated the fastest. We know that the higher the pupil weight, it yields a larger adult, and larger adults do better in the wild. So as a larger adult, you produce more offspring. Also, with faster pupation, there's less time for you to be a caterpillar in the wild. So there's less chance of predation, and there's less chance of being parasitized. In conclusion, we would like to say that induction is likely to increase the fitness of these caterpillars.
So for our future plans, we would like to see the food preference at different larval stages rather than at 20 days. Also, parasitism rates on different host plants, meaning if there's more parasitism on a certain host plant, then there would be less larvae eating that host plant.
That's it. Thank you.
Thanks. Our next speaker will be Geeter, who is a sports management student recommended by Professor Larson, and she'll be talking on leadership, be proactive.
How are everyone doing today? My name is Annalicia Geeter. I'm going to speak on leadership. Now, with the leadership presentation, I'm going to discuss what leadership is, how you all can become leaders, and how myself, I became proactive. Leadership is a process of social influence in which one person can enlist the aid and support of others in the accomplishment of a task. These leaders can go from Martin Luther King, JFK, all the way down to a teacher, a coach, and yourselves. Leadership starts from the ground up. So much like this green monster I like to call, you start from your integrity. You start from your morals, the actions that you're most consistent with. As you go up, you start to go to your hands. Your hands are something you use for action. This is how you plant, this is how you make your food, this is how you talk with people. You use your hands. And we like to use this a lot with the kids and show that energy is on the right, courage is on the other. Because in order for you to take an action, in order for you to do anything in this life, you must have courage and you must have the will to do it. Inside is what I call the it factor. Many of you guys discuss that you don't think you can be leaders, you think that people have to be very, very special to be a leader. Everyone has a capacity to be powerful, make a difference, and become a leader in their society. And that's all by trusting what you know and doing what you know. Igniting your own passion, igniting other passions, and committing to what you believe about. As you go on, the most important factor is your communication skills. You have to be able to talk and kind of adapt your message to anyone you speak to. There's many different people in this world, so not every message is going to be relayed the same. And as a leader, you must be open-minded and respectful and passionate and patient enough to change what you need to say and make sure everyone can understand. This also is supported by your vision. You must be kind of one of those people that see the forest, not the trees. This is just speaking on, you must see the bigger picture in life. And that comes with growth. I can understand that most of you guys can say that you're not the same person you were 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or even last year. I can honestly say myself, I'm not the same person as the freshman that walked into this campus. And that's because I led with an open mind, I led with my vision, I led with my passion also. A leader realizes their own potential and sees it in others too. They're connected with themselves, their peers, their community, and most importantly, their environment, the world. A leader believes and wants change. Now, the biggest part of a leader is describing what kind of change you would like to see. Most people fail when the change they would like to see in the world is something great. Something that happens like next year or 2 years that's awesome. But if you could believe in the minuscule, this tiniest bit of change, the smile that you see in a child, the difference of feeding someone, and seeing that one like happy grin, and maybe they didn't even say thank you to that, but if that's the change that you would like to see, then things are going to be made. And most importantly, you must take action, being proactive. So I suggest you all find a passion, fulfill a need, create a solution, and take action. My story. So you're probably all wondering why am I the one that can talk to you about leadership? Well, when I was a freshman, I started the Presidential Service Corps Widener program, where I did 300 hours of community service. And in my community service, I'm not gonna lie, some of the things I did not enjoy, some things I did. And one of it was Big Brother Big Sister. I have a little named Michael, and Michael is probably the most ambitious child you'll ever meet. He's hilarious. And meeting with him and being with him every single day, I came every week. I was committed, I was dedicated. And when I did that, I noticed a lot of other kids were kind of a little jealous and kind of wanted role models of their own. I didn't think much of it. I just kind of was going to go with emotions. But that same summer, my freshman year, I went to California to visit my older brother, and we went hiking in Murray Woods. This is a true story, so like bear with me. But as we were hiking, we were traveling down a path, and of course, I like to go off the path, and I got us lost. And we ran into an older man, and he asked us where we were going as he was leading us back to the path. And he asked my brother, what do you do? And he said, I go to Stanford, I'm an environmental major. And I was a little competitive and jealous, and I said, oh, well, I go to Widener University, and I do 300 hours of community service a year. Just to compare with my brother, and that didn't sound like a lot then, but to him, the first thing he said to us was, well, those are solid roots. Make sure the tree that grows from those roots are something impossible. Did not understand what that meant until he told me, work hard and change the world. Now, when you think about it, most of you guys have solid roots yourselves. You guys are all sitting here, have either graduated or on your way to it, and that's what he meant. He meant you come from a good background, good family values, and you have things that'll keep you going. But the tree that grows from it should be not one of redwoods. I could grow a dream of myself to have a big, tall redwood tree for my career. That's something everyone has seen. As though it's beautiful, it's a beautiful tree. Everyone has seen it. I'm trying to grow something more like Dr. Seuss tree. I hope all you guys will enjoy that, especially Lorax coming out. So the Dr. Seuss kind of tree that I'm trying to grow is something impossible, something that I've created, something that I paint the colors on. And that's what I want to convey to you guys. So what I did with that, my sophomore year, I decided to take what I know, what I loved, and most of it was being in the Presidential Service Corps and seeing my little every day. And I decided I want to be more role models. I want to make more role models, and I want them to sustain these values that they've learned. How I did that, I used my professional writing course my sophomore year, and I've written a proposal. I wrote this proposal deciding I wanted to have me and another Presidential Service Corps member and I decided we wanted to do a program called Northern Star Sports. We wrote the proposal in 1 year, and by our junior year, last year, we started a pilot program. This pilot program was 2 days in a church basement at the Chester Community Center. It was tough. There was leaps and bounds, and there was things that I wasn't sure I was going to complete. That's where I go back to that green monster. When you have passion and commitment, and you can trust yourselves and trust others, that should be the motivation to continue. And with that, we went on to our senior year saying, okay, if we can't make it the best thing we can, we're just going to try another year until we graduate, and hopefully everything will work out. And so it happened. These are some pictures of my coaches. Currently, I'm at Center University Elementary School. I have about 10 coaches, one's in the back, Spencer, and they're the greatest people in the world. They all have that passion, that commitment, and they trust me and I trust them. Recently, one of my coaches had the idea of running or hosting a charity run just to promote our program. We did that last Friday, and all my coaches helped within that. It was very successful. We had 100+ runners. The kids came onto campus, eyes gleaming. They got to see Widener University student athletes, and they now have more role models than I can ever dream of. Sorry, I got distracted. I love seeing them. They're so cute. But the basis of my presentation is to tell you guys to be proactive. Proactive is creating and controlling a situation, causing something to happen, rather than respond to it after it has happened. Many of you guys have ideas. Many of you guys have seen people on TV and said, wow, I thought of that idea. I thought I could create that, but why didn't I do it? And that has to go with yourself. You have to believe that you have the it factor. You have to believe that you have the capabilities to do things. And with that belief, you could do anything almost. As corny as it sounds, but by being proactive and taking action on your thoughts, you will be able to move mountains. Leadership, everyone has capacity to make a difference. Again, you must once find a passion, you got to fulfill that need, create a solution, and take action. Most importantly, be proactive and inspire others to be proactive too. So work hard and change the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final presenter today will be Brian Baldwin, who's a communication studies major. He was recommended by Professors Franzini and Stefanski. And he's going to speak on themes in science fiction and analysis and demonstration of the film genre.
All right, everyone, my name is Brian. I'm a communications film major. And basically what you're going to see today is what I presented last semester for my senior project. And what I did was I took a film genre, science fiction. It happens to be kind of one of my personal favorites. And I now analyzed it and pretty much pulled out themes that reoccur in the genre. And basically I'm going to go over like just a little bit of what I did. I can't get the whole thing, but the first part, I did a research portion of the project. And I pulled out themes from movies that I've seen, stories I've read. And the three themes that I pulled out were religion, the post-human, which basically is what comes after humanity, kind of like think like the Matrix or something like that, and future society. And that is, do we, in 200 years, do we become the perfect society, or do we basically destroy ourselves? And I took 7 examples, which were, so I don't find the slide. Yeah, I took 7 examples here, who were, they're kind of my personal favorites, but they also really demonstrate every theme that I picked out. They were The Road, I Am Legend, The Fountain, AI, Artificial Intelligence, Children of Men, The Quiet Earth, and Blade Runner. And basically I went through each of them and pulled out every theme that I found, kind of talked about it, how it relates to everything. And that's basically what I did for the research portion of it. I did a little lit review, and I did those movies. And that was only one part of it. The second part, I needed to demonstrate kind of my knowledge, I guess, of filmmaking in general over the last couple of years, as well as use every theme that I found in my movie. So I had to write, direct, edit everything, basically my movie. I started this past summer. I wrote 6 stories until finally coming up with one that I liked. I wrote like 4 drafts of that. And then by middle of last semester, it was time to shoot. I casted. I had to do everything, find props, costumes, sets, everything. And then we went out for 4 weeks. It was 10 days out of 4 weeks that we shot. And then as we were shooting, I was also in the lab those nights editing every night for about that month. And it came out to a 12-minute short film, science fiction short film, that demonstrated every theme I found. Unfortunately, I can't really show it because it's too long. But I did put together a 3-minute shorter version of a behind-the-scenes look at what I did, as well as a breakdown of all the visual effects that I did. That's why I kind of chose science fiction. It allowed me to experiment with some visual effects and things that I never did before. So I'm going to play that. Sorry, the sound's coming from the laptop. That's it.
filter your bear so much if you want. And stop.
So basically, that's kind of a behind-the-scenes look at my bigger project, which was the short film I had to make. Basically, that concludes, my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. We have time for some questions today. Have any questions from the audience? Oh, come on, don't be shy. No questions? Provost Pye.
I asked the group who did the project on post-plant preference. You talked about the issue of different weights based on different diets that your subjects had. My question to you is, were you knowledgeable of which diet the different organisms had been consuming at the time that you weighed them?
Yes, the first generation we caught in the wild, and then when we brought them into the lab, we kept them raised on the food type that they were given, like that we found them on. So we kept them on that food type the entire time. And then they mated, and then once they hatched from the out of eggs, the new larvae were kept on one food type the whole time.
And is there any possibility that your knowledge of which diet they were on in any way influenced your weight findings?
It shouldn't have, because we should have, it was all kept on the same food types the whole time.
And the instrumentation was such that your knowledge would not have influenced in any way your reporting of the weight.
Okay, Jen, I'm going to ask you a question then. Could you tell us what do you think the implications are of the research that you're doing? And if you wouldn't mind standing up for your answer.
I think the most important thing is to actually quantify the material properties of this clay. Currently, there are no known characteristics and material properties laid out of the specific clay and how it reacts after you condition it, which is the big thing, is they condition it and then they test it to see if it's ready. So if we have a process and we know if we can input how we're conditioning it into this model, we'll be able to directly tell how it should react and its capacity for being a vacuum in these lightweight body armors.
Could I ask you a follow-up? I think toward the end you talked about the viscoelastic.
Viscoelastic property?
Yeah. Could you explain a little
A
more?
viscoelastic property? Yes. There are viscoelastic clays, and they are clays that can that don't deform upon impact, and that's what we based our damping coefficients off of. But our clay is not viscoelastic, so that's why we would have to go back through and account for plastic deformation and do a work balance to account for that deformation as we calculate our damping coefficients. So that's one of our next steps we're going to do.
I wanted to ask Brian, your list of movies there, you listed Blade Runner, so I was curious, the original version or the director's cut?
The director's cut.
Just curious.
Yeah. That's a Brian question.
You said you made the short film. Do you plan to submit to any local or national competitions?
I guess that's kind of the plan. I'm a little bit still working on it. I've been kind of sitting down. It was finished basically for the senior project. I added a few more visual things, took out some shots I didn't like recently. So it's kind of getting like towards the end of finishing it, and then I'll maybe submit it to local things.
Thumbs up on the Mises shorts. Yeah.
Thank you.
Could I ask Greg and Luke, you at the end talked about a possibility that a difference in digestive enzymes was responsible for the differences you observed. Are there already results in the literature that point you toward that hypothesis?
Not exactly. They never really went in depth into investigating what's inside the lizards. And especially like what Duck said in the beginning, they really don't do too many experiments on the acclimation. They do the acute, so they'll have acclimated lizards to a certain degree, but then they'll put them in a different environment of a different temperature, and then they'll do something. So what we did was a little different, plus they don't usually go into surgical analysis of the lizards.
So why did you focus in on enzymes as the possible factor responsible for the difference?
There's only one really interesting point that we want to touch on, because we're testing only the digestibility of the Anoles, but there's a difference. So we just want to check to see what is contributing to that difference. And it's not just one of the factors that contribute to a person's digestibility. So we want to see if that's the one that's playing a factor, or if it's something else.
Cassandra, I have a question for you. You were talking about the fact that some tribes, some reservations are completely dry. If the problem of alcoholism on the reservation is such a huge problem, why are more tribes not responsive in that same way? I mean, what seems to separate that group of communities in which that restriction is in place versus the many that aren't?
That's a good question. I'm actually not sure of the answer to that. I think I'm going to understand.
But it seems kind of a, do you see other policy decisions that would have, that could be internal decisions rather than external division? You talked about a number of the external factors that led to that, but do you see any other kind of internal mechanisms for improvement of the situation?
I think just the tribes need to be more responsible, and like you said, in preventing use of alcohol on reservations. And I think that will lead to greater success.
Any other questions? I'd like to ask Provost Wilhite to help me distribute the certificates of achievement. And I'd like to thank all of our presenters for today. First of all, Nick Beaton. Harnden. Greg Millio. Cassandra Latsios. Colgan. Kelsey Fisher. Ortiz. Annalicia Geeter. And Brian Baldwin. Thank you very much, Provost Wilhite, and thank you all for attending today.